All right, folks. So today I wanted to basically go over this rather popular post from one of the tactical kind of gun pages that I follow on Facebook, and a post they had concerning basically how to get started in guns, basically, and how to just get started. But when I was reading through this, I thought, okay, there's some good things in here, but there's also a lot of not so great things, and something that another figure on YouTube who is Nut and Fancy, who has accurately depicted it as tactical elitism. And that is definitely something that is apparent in this article as we will go through it. And I will go through basically line by line and kind of go over the good points and the bad points and stuff that I agree with, don't agree with, and the reasons why behind it. So to start with, I have some Balvenie 12 year here, really good stuff. And so let's just get started here. So the post starts out with how to get started. Finding a shooting instructor. Okay, this is something a lot of people don't actually think about too much. So it says, read, ask for the resume, CV, I don't know what that is. Are they taking other courses on their own? Maybe. What is the recent experience? Sure. Read course after action reports, if there are any. Some may have it, some might not. It's a toss-up. A single NRA instructor cert and no other coursework listed is a warning sign to me. I don't necessarily agree with that, because I'd also considered at some point getting an NRA instructor cert so that way I could actually teach people at my job maybe with a little bit more credibility behind me, rather than just saying that I've been shooting for 15, 16 years and I've taught countless people how to shoot before in the past. Sometimes people really just want to see a nice piece of paper that says that you are in fact certified to do the thing that you are teaching. So being a single NRA instructor cert and no other coursework would be somebody like me if I was in that position, right? I absolutely have faith and confidence in the knowledge that I know what I'm doing, and I can comfortably teach other people how to shoot, because I've been shooting for 16, 17 years now, going on 17 years, and I've taught people before how to shoot before, so it's not anything new or cosmic to me. All right, next, fitness and combatives. Heart attacks and ass cancer are the most likely things to kill us. I kind of agree with that. In a lot of ways, this is not a not casting shade at anybody in the gun community, but there are a lot of, shall we say, not in shape people in the gun community, and it's my personal belief you should always want to go and improve yourself physically if you can, definitely. Unless your whole goal in life really is to be just a fat dude and you enjoy eating what you eat and that's how life's going to be for you, well, yeah, I'm sure. All the more power to you. Just understand your limitations that go with that. It says, get into a wrestling, boxing, or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu program that has sparring. I kind of agree with that, because if you have never actually been in a fight, real or sparring or anything else, as a man, you should absolutely experience what it is to get your ass completely handed to you in a fight. I think everybody needs to experience that at least once in their life, and I've been there a couple times myself. There is nothing more humbling to a person than getting your ass handed to you in a fight. It will teach you so much more than any classroom can in any amount of time. Trust me on that. So I do agree on that point. It says, eat less, calorie counts, and intermittent fasting are things. Sure. I don't really believe in fad diets myself. I just believe don't eat like a fat ass, exercise every once in a while, drink more water, you'll be fine. Simple. Okay. Continued learning sources. He listed some websites here. Active self-protection. I don't like active self-protection. I don't like the guy who runs it. I think he gets a little bit kind of, I don't know, there's something about his presentation and his information that doesn't seem right to me. I can't quite place my finger on it. And I don't want to necessarily get into too much of like a personal attack, but let's be honest here. The dude who runs ASP, I forget his name, he has a fat boy laugh. He laughs like a fat kid, okay? So I'm not saying that's a bad thing, it's just something I noticed, and it's very, very hard for me to sit through a whole video from him because I just can't take him seriously. I just can't. And that's on me, not on him. So don't get your gun stolen. Very, very important. This has happened personally to a couple friends of mine who have left their gun in an unsecured location, like their car. And depending on how cosmic and crazy you want to get with your own gun security in your house or wherever else you're storing your guns, that's entirely up to you. I think you should at the very least have a safe or some kind of lock or trigger lock or cable lock going through your guns. Depending on how many guns you have, that may not be practical. You may not be keeping them up to date or track of all the different keys that go with all the different cable locks. That's definitely the case for me. I have way too many guns to be putting cable locks through all of them, so I generally just toss them in a safe or other secure location, lock them down, I'm good to go. Your car is not a holster. This is absolutely true. Your car is not a holster. Do not leave it in plain sight. Of course, if you have any sense, you leave valuables out of sight when you park your car and leave it, and you also lock your doors and roll your windows up anytime you're leaving it, for any amount of time, which is what I do because I'm paranoid. I know there's some people out there that don't lock their car doors when they walk away from them. I think that's insane. I don't get that. And there's also people who, I believe it or not, there are people actually out there who own Jeeps. I know, it's crazy. I'll let you register that shock for a minute. But there are people who own Jeeps who literally just leave their stuff in their Jeep in plain sight with no covering, no tarp, no locks, nothing. They just leave it there. And then they're so surprised when someone walks along and just goes, whoop, has some sticky fingers and walks off with it. Color me surprised. But hey, that's Jeep owners for you, right? Next, he's talking about shooting skills. So it says build a practice regimen. I do agree with that to an extent. I can't necessarily recommend one particular regimen over the other because for me, honestly, a lot of the dry fire and stuff is just from me fooling around in my house. Just holding my guns and practice dry firing and practice reloading and stuff as I'm walking around, just having a good old time. And that actually works for me. So, but for some other people who maybe have a house full of other occupants, that may not be the most practical way to go about things. You're probably going to scare somebody. For targets, he says masking tape, 3x5 cards, index cards, and paper plates from Dollar Tree. This is a very effective and very cheap means of producing your own targets. There's nothing more satisfying than being able to say, hey, I've got all my hits in a index size card, because that is a size of something that people can relate to. So when you say, hey, I'm so good, I can hit all my shots with an index size card at 7-10 yards, whatever distance you have, people will think like, wow, that's pretty good. So I definitely agree with that point. Nice cheap targets, and you can have a sense of accomplishment because you can more easily relate those sizes to people rather than saying, yeah, I got a 1-inch group at 100 yards with this rifle. Well, to people who don't know any better, that doesn't really mean a whole lot to them. But if you say, hey, I got all of this within the size of like, I don't know, a quarter or $50, that's pretty impressive, right? So pretty cool. Let's see, concealed carry skills and drills, indoor practice range sessions. Sure, I don't really see the difference on why they have to make a distinction for indoor range, whatever. Basic drills, be able to extract load and firearm efficiently from storage without time pressure, duh. You should be able to do that without assistance. That's kind of the point. Properly, consistently align your sights, easy enough. Get a consistent sight picture, grip stance, posture, which should be coached before awkward shooting positions like supine. Absolutely agree there. Learn the basics and fundamentals first before you go out and do crazy stuff like supine or prone or whatever the hell different positions you want to try. Demonstrate consistent control trigger manipulation, very, very important. The thing that I run into the most issues with people teaching them to learn how to shoot is consistent trigger pulls. That is so difficult for people to grasp for some reason. That is the number one thing everybody gets hung up on. Let's see. Repeatable, consistent results, slow firing at a static target. Absolutely agree with this. Absolutely. That is the way that I train people how to shoot. That's the way that I learned how to shoot. Accuracy over speed in the beginning, absolutely 100%. Totally agree. Identifying shoot, no shoot targets. Honestly, I don't really do a whole lot of this myself. You should understand what you should be shooting and what you should not be shooting. Understand post-fight protocols and identify legal justification to engage in legal force. Pretty important stuff. Most people don't think about that part. A gunfight is a complicated thing. That to get into it, there's a lot you can miss because you're in the moment. You have adrenaline rushing. You can make poor judgment. That is true of everybody, even trained individuals. Intermediate skills: drawing and firing from a holster under time pressure. Pretty easy enough. Consistently hitting a target while firing strings in multiple rounds. Cool. This is just a build up in your fundamentals. As you, your entire goal, I think, with getting better with firearms is you start slow, hit accurately. As you go up in skill, maintain that level of accuracy, but go just a little bit faster every single time. And you get to the point where you have an incredible level of accuracy and are also very, very fast. So obviously the ideal shooter is incredibly fast and incredibly accurate. So getting to that point is the ideal where you want to be. So all practice should lead up to improving to get to that point. Next, reloading your pistol under pressure. Pretty important. Some people are more clumsy than others when it comes to reloads. And definitely with certain pistols, like say this Glock right here, they do not necessarily have like a beveled magazine well. So when you're going to put your mag in, you may get caught on the follower. You may do some, or I've seen videos of cops literally putting the magazine in backwards, and they're holding it like, oh, what the hell? And then they turn it around, and then they put it in. So for some people, that's more of a trained thing they need to do than others. I've never had an issue with it. It's never been an issue for me. But then again, I practice dry reloads all the friggin' time. So definitely a learned skill. Okay. Transitioning between weapons and tasks. Kind of, to me, that feels kind of like second nature. Like if you're moving around in your house or whatever, and you have your pistol on one hand, you're trying to, open a door and still maintain control of your pistol and know where you're shooting. Most people don't really think about that because a lot of range time is not spent interacting with an environment around you. It's usually just you standing at a target, just blasting away. So there's a lot you learn about how you move and how your body works and everything, and how you hold stuff when you're moving around an environment and actually manipulating objects and working with things or pushing somebody off while you're shooting them. It should be practiced at least somewhat. Identify cover and concealment. Very important in theory, but kind of hard to practice in reality because the different materials and things act differently depending on what's being shot through them. So something that you may think is good cover, like, I don't know, a wall or something, or there's a door behind me, you think, oh, okay, that's a pretty sturdy door, that can take something, right? Most materials are weaker than you think to bullets, so don't trust a whole lot of what you might consider cover. Utilizing basic movement while performing the above tasks. Sure. Yeah, one thing a lot of people like to note is, or don't realize, is that when you're moving, your sight picture is just going to go all over the freaking place, and your accuracy goes to shit. So it's actually one thing that video games actually get right to an extent, is that if you're moving, it's very, very hard to keep a good, consistent sight picture. Try it sometime, you'll see what I mean. All right. Next. Perform these tasks while using your offhand to call for help, operate light, blah, blah, blah. Okay, yeah, that's we've already covered that. Advanced. Navigate gun handling from conversational ranges. Okay, yeah, learn how to basically use your gun in very, very tight situations, or if the guy is using some other kind of weapon like a knife. Pretty important. A lot of these I'm not really going to cover because they're a bit specific. They're good things that you should cover, but they're a bit specific. Here they're going over a bunch of holsters. So here's a point here. Dumb holsters and methods of carry. So Starts here by saying Phobos is trash. I've never used Phobos, don't intend to, no opinion there. Soft nylon is trash. Don't really agree with that because I actually have used soft nylon holsters every once in a while, and some of them have, some of them are decently comfy to carry, and if you're not being turned upside down and shaken, your pistol will stay in its holster. Leather is for boomers, and quality leather is expensive. Kydex does it better and cheaper. This one I don't agree with at all. Leather is quite nice to have for holsters. Quality leather is expensive. It definitely is. It's not as easy to make as the plastic stuff is, but leather has a certain quality all on its own because it is an organic material. It's softer, it's nicer than Kydex is. It feels better to me. It looks better to me. And also, Kydex tends to wear the finish on guns a heck of a lot more than leather does. I don't recommend long-term storage though in leather holsters for like really any amount of time, because there's a lot of oils and things that soak into leather that can really ruin your firearm finish if you leave it in there for a long time. But Kydex absolutely does have more abrasion than leather does, and it definitely wears your finish a lot more. Because at the end of the day, it's a piece of plastic. So hybrid holsters suck. No opinion on that. I don't really believe in them myself. Serpa holsters are trash. Now this is going to be a controversial one. So personally, I don't think Serpas are all that great because the simple design of it is the release is right next to the freaking trigger guard. Dude, what sense does that freaking make, right? I don't care what anyone says about, oh, you should train to it, or oh, it's a better design, or my retention. No. Ergonomically, it doesn't make any sense to me. No. Don't agree with them, don't like them. Alright, I'm talking about some more holster stuff. Stuff that's really specific, don't really care about. Make sure that your gun can be drawn from your holster while seated. This is pretty important. As one thing that I've noticed when I started carrying is when I carry appendix is that when I get in my truck and sit down, I actually can't really get to my gun when I'm sitting down. So carjacker comes in this way, I'm not going to be all like, oh, hang on a sec and then shoot him. It's gonna be, I'm gonna be doing this and he's gonna pop me. So I usually in my truck, if I'm carrying appendix or somewhere else, I usually dismount that and put it in the center console, so that way if he says, hey, give me your money, give me your car, like, hey, no worries, man, I'll give it to you, it's in my center console. Oh, by the way, bam, you're dead. Just me. Gun car magnets are stupid. Yeah, that is true. Constantly taking a loaded gun in and out of the holster during the day is dumb and raises your risk of having an ND. Very true. You shouldn't be taking it on and off during the day anyways. Unnecessarily stowing the gun off body in the glove box or in the car seat or elsewhere in the car invites trouble. To a point. Unfortunately, in my job, I have nowhere else to put my firearm because I am not allowed to carry on a military installation. So that kind of sucks. So I have to usually disarm before I get on base and then take my rounds out, take the magazines out, stuff everything in the center console, and hopefully the cop doesn't want to do a freaking inspection of my car and have to explain why I have a firearm in the car on a military base. I'm like, dude, it's my carry gun. I carry when I get off of work. Leave me alone. But that's a whole different story. Talking about some more stuff. Okay, talking about pepper spray for some reason. I don't really buy that. Honestly, I don't see a point. Now we're getting to the meat and potatoes here, where he starts talking about weapon selection, ammo selection. This is the point where I kind of had some issues here with the tactical elitism, because he starts off bright and early with AR-15 selection. Ooh boy. So he says, Palmetto State Armory, PSA, and Anderson are cheap, meme-tier trash with poor quality control. Absolutely hard disagree here. I have two Palmetto State rifles, a pistol AR and a 7.5 inch, which is silly, but I got it for free, so I'm not going to argue. And a 16 inch M forgery that has worked 100% for me. I've had no issues with it whatsoever. Now, I've only put about maybe 400, 500 rounds through it, but there's nothing to suggest that I would have issues with it for whatever reason. It's been working fine. Is it the best AR I have? No, far from it. It is budget in every single way compared to my nicer Aero Precision Armalite rifles. The cost and the budget nature of it definitely does show. I will not argue that. However, to say that they are weapons that don't work and will not get the job done for a majority of people is absolutely incorrect. I do not buy into that. You can use as many stories and anecdotal evidence as you want, but I have just as much anecdotal evidence to suggest the complete opposite, including my own. And there's nobody else's experience that I trust more than my own, because they are my experiences and what I've seen and experienced for myself. So I've made up my own mind on that, and I do not believe PSA or Anderson are cheap crap that nobody should buy. I don't believe that at all. Next, Bravo Company, USA, Colt, Psionics, Knights Armament, or Sons of Liberty Gunworks are generally good places to start. Yes and no. So let's be real here. A lot of people out there are not looking to go out and spend $1,000+ on a rifle or gun of any kind. In fact, most people tend to stay around the $300 to $500 or maybe $600 range for pretty much all of their gun purchases ever. And there's nothing wrong with that, because there is such a thing as getting high value for your money in the gun world. I definitely believe that. These are not bad companies at all by any means. They make really quality products, but man, you are going to be paying for them. Do you get what you pay for? Yes, to an extent. There is such a thing as diminishing returns, where you're going to be paying 20, 50, 60% more for maybe a 5 or 10% more increase in quality, if that much. I definitely do not buy into brand name hype that, you know, it's like, oh, this brand is the best because they are. Is there some fact to back that up? Sure. I mean, I will not doubt, or not doubt, I will not deny that I have a huge thing for HK guns. And what backs me up on that is the fact that they are actually good quality guns. Do I necessarily think all of their stuff is absolutely worth the money that they charge? No, I think there's a lot of it that you are paying for the name, for sure. HK is not immune to that by any means. And I'll be the first one to say that. That goes the same with all these other companies they have on here. You know, VCM, Colt, Psionics, Knights Armament, Sons of Liberty Gunworks, right? They do make good stuff, but not everybody is comfortable spending that much money for an AR. And then he has a comment here about Daniel Defense, saying that their owner cucked out on bump stocks. Sure, whatever. Daniel Defense has made good stuff in the past. I think they're a bit overpriced, and I think they are... their marketing is very, very good. Let's put it that way. Their marketing it reminds me a lot of Kimber, where it does grab people's attention, and people really do want Daniel Defense rifles. You know, because every time I go to a Cabela's or a Bass Pro Shops, you go to like the nice gun library part. There's almost always a Daniel Defense Super Gucci nice rifle sitting right up there on the mantle, and everybody comes in and is like, oh wow, look at that rifle! What a nice rifle! I want that rifle. So Daniel Defense does sell themselves very well. Do they make a quality product? Sure. Are they worth as much as they're charging? I don't think so. Next, AK-47 selection. Oh boy. IO Inc. and Century RAS 47s are mean tier trash. Now this one I actually will agree with, because IO is absolutely notorious for having shitty AKs, and it's part. So the AK community at large has basically an entire established canon and lore about who makes good AKs and who doesn't, and Rob Ski of AK Operators Union plays a very large role in that. But it is undeniable that IO Inc. is trash. Do not buy them, ever. Century RAS 47s are also trash. I've handled those in person. They suck. They are terrible. They are not worth the money they are asking. They are not durable. They will not last. Garbage. That pretty much goes for almost all Century-made AKs. Now, I do not mean Century imported AKs, I mean Century made AKs. So your C39s, your C39 V2s, your VSKAs, never doing that again. My first AK, unfortunately, was a C39 V2, which the time that I had it, it worked perfectly. I put about 1,500 rounds through it. It worked fine. It was accurate, the trigger was good, it felt nice and solid, but after I started seeing the deformation in the inside of the receiver and how much that gun was beating itself up, like the bolt carrier and the bolt, and then doing my research later, watching AK Operators Union and also reading reports from other people online about this rifle, I decided to get rid of it because it wasn't going to hold up the way I wanted it to. So I ended up getting rid of that. Arsenal, Krebs Custom, and Rifle Dynamics are the only companies that make a decent AK nowadays. Kind of disagree on this one because there's a lot more people out there making AKs now than there was before in the past, definitely, for sure. If you've been watching the SHOT Show 2020 coverage, like freaking everybody's making an AK now. So, I mean, Palmetto State must have like, I don't know, like 6 or 7, 8 new freaking AK lines they're bringing out. Where's it going with that? So there's a lot of people making AKs now, including Century. So Century itself is getting a little bit better at making the AKs. I still don't trust them, honestly, but we'll see if they actually get any better and are worth a damn later. Now, Arsenal I have an issue with because Arsenal charges too much damn money for their AKs, okay? Their availability is trash. I can never find the Arsenal, so the exact Arsenal that I want at any particular time, I cannot find one. And when I do find one, it's massively overpriced, and I'm just not interested in paying that. Now, are Arsenal AKs nice? Absolutely, they are nice AKs. They are wonderful pieces. I fired, like 2 or 3 of them, 5.45s and 7.6239. Great rifles. But I am just not interested in paying that much and having to go through all that work and everything just to find the exact model I want. And Arsenal is known for being naughty, for coming out and saying, oh, we found some more old stock in the back of the warehouse that just happens to be available. Yeah, right. Give me a fucking break. Krebs Custom, I've heard good things about them. I've not encountered anybody who actually has one before. I just don't have any personal experience to really talk about that. Rifle Dynamics. Now, I actually did meet somebody who had a Rifle Dynamics pistol AK, and that thing was freaking smooth. Oh, it's my Facebook. So this dude's rifle was so finely tuned and so well made, and like he had all the fixings on this thing, and it just worked like a freaking sewing machine. It was just so smooth and great, and like the action was awesome, and the bolt wasn't going super fast or anything. It was going just as fast as it needed to. Ultra reliable, really like great stuff that they do there. Definitely do recommend, but you will be paying a premium. So let's move on to rifle ammunition. So for 5.56, all he says is a lot of this depends on what your AR-15's barrel twist is. It's mostly that used to matter a lot more back in like the early to mid 2000s. Not so much anymore when pretty much everything is going to be a 1-7, a 1-8, or even a 1-9 twist. But usually everything now is going to be a 1-8 or 1-7, which will stabilize pretty much all ammunition that you can find nowadays, except maybe for like the super weird varmint rounds, which are like 40 grain bullets that go like 10 million feet a second. Some of the faster twists may have issues with that. But in general, 1-7, 1-8 twist, you'll be able to stabilize pretty much all ammunition out there. 7.6239 says 7.6239 and 5.45 don't have anywhere near as many options for good defensive ammo. This is a half truth in the sense that how many options do you really need? So 7.6239, 5.45 all have your regular FMJ ball. They have soft point ammo, and they also have hollow point ammo. So, as you know, when you're shooting, shall we say, individuals that need to be stopped from committing terrible, heinous things, FMJ is not usually the way you want to go. You usually want to go with a hollow point for soft, fleshy targets, or a soft point if you're hitting, I don't know, a deer or something, like you're going hunting, right? Something that needs a little bit more penetration, but still do enough damage to the actual like fleshy bits to matter. So really, so as long as you have the hollow point, the FMJ covered, there's really not a whole lot of other different bullet types you might need. Now, will more advanced and more varied and more dynamic bullet types do better in certain applications against certain things? Absolutely. But for general purpose, if you're going like Operation Big Igloo, right, and you're mostly hunting, two-legged humanoids, FMJ, hollow point, soft point, you'll be just fine. Okay, red dot optics. Aimpoint Pro will give you the least amount of headaches for a reasonable price. I actually have one of those, and it is the best red dot I have used thus far. But that being said, most of my red dots are also not $350, $400. Most of my red dots are well below that, probably around like a $150, $100 range, with the exception of a SIG 4H Romeo that I have, which is also $350. But I don't necessarily believe you need to go out and spend a whole lot of money for a nice red dot. I'd say maybe the minimum you want to go is $100 to $150 for a decent red dot that won't shit the bed. But I don't necessarily believe you need to go out and buy the huge name brands like Trijicon. Like you don't need to go out and get a super duper fancy Trijicon or a super fancy aim point. Will they work? Absolutely. Do they have a noticeable difference in quality of glass clarity and red dot clarity and durability and all that stuff over the cheaper stuff? Absolutely it will. But the question becomes, how important is that to you for what you're trying to do for the money that you're spending? So if all you're doing is going to the range, you just want a red dot for your rifle to go plinking or whatever, you really don't need to spend the extra money to go get the nicer, more durable stuff, because you're not going to be using it to its full potential anyways. Now, if you have the money and you want to go spend that stuff, by all means, more power to you. Go and get it, because, like I said before, the Aimpoint Pro is by far the best, the clearest red dot that I have used out of all the red dots I have used before. EOTechs are overpriced trash compared to Aimpoint and Trijicon. I do not believe that for a second. So way back when, in the mid and early 2000s, when EOTech was getting to be a really big popular thing, it was the optic to get at the time. You know, if your dad had an EOTech on his rifle, you were the cool kid on the block. So that's actually what my dad did. For his AR build, he bought one of the very earliest EOTechs for his rifle with a magnifier, and it worked perfectly. It's not as clear as the modern models are, naturally, but for the time, it was really cool, it was really innovative, and it was quite durable, and it did everything we needed it to do. So I really don't think EOTechs are overpriced. I think they're exactly where they need to be. I just don't personally have interest in them because, for the most part, a red dot can do all the same things that a holographic can for right around the same price. I don't necessarily like the whole aesthetic of like having this big brick thing sticking on top of my rifle. And I will admit there is a bit of like a mystique around the name EOTech, because the early, mid, and late 2000s, EOTech was the name. Like you were the tactical cool guy if you had EOTechs. So they definitely have played on that a little bit. Next, flashlights. For any gun intended for home defense, flashlights are an absolute necessity. I do believe this. Absolutely do believe this. It says, shooting your own kid because you blindly fired before identifying your target is dumb. Absolutely agree with this. Target identification is one of the most important things that you can do in a firefight. I have personally been witness to this because one night I was coming home late from work, and it was like 2 or 3 in the morning. I come back home, sit on the couch, turn the TV on, open up a beer, having a good time, right? Just relaxing, getting off work. Next thing I know, I look up, and right in the staircase there is kind of like an opening, right? It's not a window, it's just an opening in the staircase, and I see the muzzle of a 1911 pointed right at me. And I realized who this was. It was my dad. He thought I was somebody breaking into the house. Now, I don't know what kind of intruder breaks into your house and starts watching TV, drinking your beer, and just sits down and has a good time. I don't know who really does that. I've never seen an intruder who does that. But nevertheless, I had a loaded firearm pointed right at me, and he was ready to pull the trigger. The only thing that stopped him was target identification. So, needless to say, I was a little bit annoyed that he would point a gun at me, but, things happen. So, back to the point. Having a flashlight in your gun is absolutely essential if you're using it for home defense, because who knows when your dumb friends might be playing a prank on you, or maybe your girlfriend's coming home late, maybe your boyfriend's coming home late, your dog is making some weird noises, and when they wake you up in the middle of the night and something goes bump in the night, you want to make sure it's something that you actually want to shoot. This is very, very important. I don't really joke about that too much. Surefire mounted lights are great for extended use and flexing on pores. Surefire does make good stuff, yeah. The whole thing of flexing on pores, I get it, it's a joke, I get it. But there's a point at which people actually start believing the joke and start buying their own bullshit, which I don't agree with. Surefire X300U works for the majority of weapon mounted light applications. True, but man, that thing is freaking big. It's like, it's like sticking out here. It's massive. It's a big, huge thing. For certain applications, yes, it does work. Does it work for everybody? No. Does it work for all applications? No. It is a big, chunky light. Does it work? Is it super bright? Does it work great? Is it durable? Absolutely. For the sake of finding a good compatible holster, the only pistol weapon mounted lights I currently recommend are the Surefire X300U and Streamlight TLR1HL. Still to this day, finding a nice holster that'll fit your weapon mounted light is a bit of a pain in the ass, because there's no standard for it really. And the other issue with just basic retention holsters is the weapon mounted light tends to be a little wider than the actual pistol itself. So when you have it in a holster and you put it in there, the reason why it gets held in place is because it tends to narrow like this, right? So it's a pressure fit. But if you have something at the bottom there that bows it out, it doesn't really hold it anymore. And that's one of the major issues that holster makers have simple retention friction fit holsters with weapon mounted lights, is it just doesn't work. EDC flashlights, Surefire LLC, EDC L2 T is currently the best option on the market. I mean, carry a flashlight on you. Honestly, something is better than nothing, even if it's a cheap Chinese freaking piece of shit you got from Wish for free. It's better than nothing. So carry something. I really don't care what you have. Pistol ammo, Federal Premium HST, Spear Gold Dot, or Hornady Critical Duty for EDC. Yeah, I generally agree with that. I've been raised on Spear Gold Dot myself. That's what I've always used. That's what I carry to this day, and it has always worked great for me. Have I actually shot somebody with it yet? No. Hopefully I don't have to, but I've seen enough performance tests from ballistics gel and other things to know that it will reliably put down a person. So I'm not worried about the effectiveness of it. G2 RIP is trash. I feel like this is an unnecessary, pardon the pun, rip on G2 RIP, or RIP, whatever the hell you want to call it. It is kind of an exotic ammo. I don't really believe it's that effective as it's advertised. I think it's for people who are not especially intelligent. As the old saying goes, a fool and his money are often parted. Shotgun ammo. Just use Federal Flight Control double-aught 8-pellet buckshot. The reason 8-pellet is preferred is because a 9th pellet always wanders off from the rest of the pellets in a shot grouping. I don't know how much of that I actually believe to shotguns, but I do have enough to know that if you're hitting somebody with buckshot within certain distances, you will absolutely make a mess of them. So does the pellet count matter so much? I really don't think so. Does the flight control from Federal actually work in keeping your grouping nice and tight? Absolutely it does. I've seen proof of that myself and shot some myself, so I can personally attest that stuff actually does keep your grouping of your pellets quite a bit tighter. And that can be a good or a bad thing depending on the application that you want to do with a shotgun. That's the cool thing about shotguns is they have a lot of uses. Shotgun recommendations. Magpul SGA stock is awesome. I don't even know what that is. I assume it's the usual Magpul stock that they make that's kind of all angular and shit and looks all fucking modern. Sure. Whatever. I never used it myself because I think they're ugly. but they probably work pretty well. Pre-2008 Remington 870s are generally okay, but keep a spare parts kit if you shoot it a lot. I don't have any personal experience with Remington 870s. I don't like 870s because they are not lefty friendly. Mossbergs tend to be a little bit more ambidextrous friendly than 870s are. And I generally have very, very little faith in Remington products to begin with. So I have no reason to own a Remington 870 when I can get a Mossberg 590 or 500, which is just as good or better. Mossberg 590 A1, is okay, but may have spotty quality control, so keep a spare parts kit if you shoot it a lot. I don't agree with that. Out of the two 590s that my family has owned the entire time, I have pretty much lived and then some because my dad's shotgun is older than I am. We've never had any issues with parts breakages ever. My own 590, never had issues with it. I don't see it breaking or anything. And I really don't believe in the Mossberg spotty quality control. I've never heard of that before in my life. And I've never experienced it myself, so I don't put much stock in that claim. Beretta 1301 is awesome. Don't know, never used it. Pistol recommendations, Glock 17 or 19. Whoa, look at that. Most aftermarket support for holsters, cheap magazine parts availability. Undeniably true. Glocks are one of the most aftermarket supported pistols ever made. Do I like Glocks? Nope, sure don't. Do they work? Yep, sure do. This is actually a Glock 22 police trade-in that I put a 9mm barrel in just for fun because I wanted to shoot 9mm out of it so I can have both a 17 and a 22 in the same pistol. That's just me. For most people, for most applications, a Glock 17 or 19 will work just fine. Will it be the most pleasant shooting experience? Are you going to be the most accurate? Is it going to wow you? Absolutely not. No way, no how. Glocks are strictly utilitarian in purpose, and that is it. I don't believe they are good really for anything else other than that. Smith & Wesson M&P series, sure, why not? Some cops like them, some people like them. I think they are a million times more ergonomic than a Block 17 or 19. But I don't have a whole lot of faith in the polymer that Smith & Wesson uses. It feels very cheap and chintzy to me, and I also do not like a hinged trigger. Needless to say, the M&P 1.0 series was incredibly disappointing to me. I never liked them. They suck. So the 2.0s actually are pretty nice. I may get one at some point, but I just can't get over the fact that the polymer just feels so cheap. Next, HK VP9 or P30 series. Ooh, let me get mine real quick. Oh yeah, look at that. Freaking VP9. Love this thing. It's my competition gun, actually. So, HK VP9 or P30 series. The P30 is, well, it's an HK, so it's going to work for you. VP9 is literally just a striker-fired version of that gun, and this thing has worked phenomenally for me for the past 2,500 rounds I've put through it. Infinitely better in pretty much every single way to me than a Glock. And I oh my gosh, I could just gush all day about this pistol. And it's not just because I own it, because I have, both of them. I'm just saying, if I had the option to spend $500 and get a Glock 1917 or a VP9, it would be a VP9 every single day, all day, every day. Let's see. So here's another part where he starts getting into a little bit of the tactical elitism. Gun things we will probably make fun of you for unironically owning. First thing, Mini 14. No, don't agree with that. I grew up with two Mini 14s, one of which was classic A-Team, so it was like the stainless steel folding stock with the black pistol grip, and pretty sure it was a stainless steel barrel with the wood and everything. Classic gun. Absolutely love that thing. It is so much fun to shoot. Not the most accurate thing in the world, sure, but crazy reliable, feeds anything I ever shot it. It sucks that it used proprietary mags, but back in the day when Mini 14s came out, AR-15s were not the be-all, end-all of 5.56 rifles. So the fact that it used proprietary mags that only fit the Mini 14 wasn't a big deal, because at the time, So did everything else. They also used their own proprietary mags. So it was the norm at the time when that rifle came out. Absolutely love that gun, and I'm not just saying it because I have rose-tinted glasses, because it really is just a reliable, like, simple, good gun. It has done nothing to me to suggest that it is not a worthy addition of someone's armory, like my dad. Now, the other Mini 14 I owned was a post-ban, or I don't want to say post-ban, but middle of the assault weapons ban Mini 14. So this thing was neutered. It did not have a flash hider. It did not have a bayonet lug. Could not have a pistol grip, and only came with a 10-round mag, which was the case back then. Horrible, I know. But this thing was an absolute, like, it wasn't great, because it was chambered for 223 Remington, not 5.56 NATO. And this is an important distinction because 5.56 NATO is actually a teensy bit longer than 223. So anytime I fired 5.56 on the rifle, that thing would jam something fierce. I would have to freaking mortar that shit down, and the case would be all fucked up, and it flew out, and the accuracy was all over the damn place. So that wasn't very cool. But anytime I fired 223 out of it, no issues whatsoever. The best accuracy I could squeeze out of that thing with iron sights was right around 4 MOA at 100 yards, which is, honestly, it's not great, especially for today's standard, where a cheapo PSA AR for 350 can get you like a 2 MOA group or better with regular ammo, and then a Mini 14, which costs like $700-800, gets you a 4 MOA group. It's pretty poor performance for today's standards, I'm not going to lie. That being said, if you just happen to have one, you shouldn't really be shamed for owning it. It'll still work. It'll still put, 223, 5.56 holes in people. I don't think there's anything really inherently wrong with them. So they do work as long as you get the one that's not all fucked up from the assault weapons ban, and also provided that you don't pay for it today. If you actually did go out and buy a Mini 14 now for the price that they want, I'm sorry, but you're not getting your money's worth. I definitely don't think they are worth that much. Next, Taurus Judge. I actually kind of agree with this. Taurus Judges are horrible guns to shoot, horrible guns to own. They suck. End of story. 40 caliber pistols. This is something I do not agree with at all, because this is a Glock 22 40 cal pistol. Police trade-in. It has worked perfectly for me, even in the original stock configuration with 40 cal. Was it the most pleasant thing to shoot? Absolutely not. This thing freaking sucked to shoot in 40. But did it work? Did it put holes in things? Absolutely it did. Does it hold freaking 15 in a mag? You betcha. So, will it work for defensive purposes? Absolutely it will. I don't believe these people who just because they don't like 40, they kind of believe that if you shoot somebody with a 40, if you have a 40 cal handgun, that you're somehow not armed, or you're underpowered, or that's not going to stop somebody. It will put holes in people. It will drop people, just like anything else will. That being said, is 40 cal my most favorite caliber? Absolutely not. I actually don't have any 40 cal at all left in my stockpile. I shot it all because I just don't enjoy shooting it very much. I think it's too snappy, it recoils too much, and it costs too much to shoot. I just don't like it. Another good example here. This is a Beretta 96 A1. Right? This originally came in 40 cal, and I shot probably 800 rounds of 40 cal through this pistol. Never had a single issue with it. It has been consistently accurate, great gun to shoot. Still quite snappy because it was a 40 cal. In fact, I got yelled at the range a couple times because they assumed that this was a 9mm. So when it was snapping up like crazy, range officer was telling me, "Hey, you need to control your gun there, mister. It's just a 9mm. Why are you letting it do that number?" To which I said, "No, it's actually a 40. And he's like, "What? They make those in 40? Anyway, but I ended up buying a 9mm barrel for it because, you know what? I really wanted a freaking M9, but I didn't want to go out and buy another one, so I just bought a 9mm barrel and put it in this gun, and it works flawlessly. With the added benefit that the 96 pistols were designed and beefed up to shoot 40 cal. So, that's a positive benefit because they are a much more beefed up chassis and gun, so they will handle the 9mm a whole lot better. And yeah, less parts wear and breakages on my end. Sounds like a win to me. Next up, Springfield XDs. I do not like Springfield XDs at all, but not necessarily for reliability issues, because they feel cheap, they look terrible, the trigger sucks. They are a horrible attempt to copy a Glock, and I hate them. But a few people I know actually do like them. And some of them have done mods to them to improve them, make them better. Do I hold that against them? No, because when I've actually shot them with those upgrades and improvements, they actually weren't bad. They were almost on par with some of the regular stock factory guns that I have. So if you do some work to them, they are just okay. They are not great. I don't like them personally. I think they're ugly as sin, and the triggers suck. They're just bad. Next, Ruger pistols. I do not agree with this at all. I am a big Ruger fan. All the Rugers I have owned have been great guns. I even know some of my friends who have carried Ruger pistols, the cheaper lines, for a very long time, and it's kept them safe and protected. So I don't know where this reputation for Ruger pistols come from. Honestly, a lot of their guns are budget minded, but that doesn't mean that they're bad. That doesn't mean that they can't get the job done and do the intended purpose that they were designed to do. So I like Ruger because they're very budget friendly, while also being a pretty good value for the money. And if you want to go crazier on stuff, you absolutely can if you want. Next, Taurus pistols. Now, for the longest time, I would actually agree with this, but they are getting better. Taurus, pretty much anything for the longest time, and we're talking for decades, was absolutely garbage guns. They would break, fall apart, blow up your face, all kinds of crap things, and they were just not good. They were cheap for a reason. You got what you paid for, and they were just bad. But they are getting better, surprisingly. Ever since they moved a large part of their operations to the States, they actually have been improving somewhat. And I will give them credit where credit is due. They actually have been performing pretty well lately. With their like G2C, G3 line, even the Taurus TX22, which has given the Glock 44 a run for its money, which I find absolutely delicious. If you went and got one today, one of their newer lines, I would not necessarily fault you for that. Do I think you could have spent your money on something better? Yes. But I think it will work long enough to do what it was supposed to do. And if that purpose was to keep you safe, to defend yourself, I think it would do that role just fine. Next, Shockwave and TAC-14 shotguns in their stock configuration. I don't agree with this either. I can see a lot of potential applications for these kinds of guns, because as I was doing drills around my own house with my freaking 590 shotgun with the big freaking Choy stock and pistol grip, with the 8-round magazine tube and the big ass barrel and everything, that thing is a long gun. And when I was rounding around corners and stuff, I just realized just how long that is. I mean, it's like it's freaking sticking out there. So what I ended up doing is I ended up either tucking the stock underneath my arm or having it on the outside here so I could round a corner and get somebody with it. But with the Shockwave and TAC-14 shotguns, like the bird's head pistol grip that are super short, that gives you a little bit more flexibility and ease of movement within extremely short distances. So do I recommend it for anything outside of extremely short distances? Absolutely not. They are utterly impractical for that. But if all you're doing is going to be point shooting, where there's almost no way you're going to miss this guy, it's hip firing, perfectly fine. I don't see an issue with that at all. Sights and gun parts and accessories. Trijicon HD night sights are awesome. Yes, they are. Very good for the money. That's what my current carry gun has. I had to replace the factory sights that were on them because the phosphoric paint had flown off of the gun and I couldn't find it. So I put the Trijicon HD night sights on there, and they are great. Fiber optics are generally fine. To an extent, yes. So for instance, I have fiber optic front sight here on my VP9 with a blacked out rear. That is my preferred target sight for pretty much everything. For combat, for target accuracy, that is my preferred setup. My only issue with fiber optics is that when they get hot, the plastic, depending on the durability and who makes it, can either melt, it can warp, it can fall out of the holder for the sight, and they generally just aren't very durable. And of course, when you're in an environment that does not have light, they don't do anything for you at all. XS big dots suck. I've never believed in XS big dots. I think it's weird. I think it's goofy. I don't think it's any better. Then they get into a little bit of professional shooters or competitive shooters and trainers that, you know, and the stuff that they use. Now, here's the thing with professional and competitive shooters. Are they good at what they do? Yes, that is undeniable. Now, I don't necessarily agree with, well, if that's what the pros use, that's what you should use. I don't really agree with that. I think you should pretty much use what kind of works for you, with certain exceptions. But I really, really don't believe in the whole trend that is whatever this popular competitive guy is doing must be gospel and we must follow this to the letter. I don't agree with that at all. My own personal style and taste are going to be different from professional shooters. They absolutely are. Now, there are some similarities with the stuff that I do that professional shooters do, but I'm not going to wear the same shoes as he does, wear the same pants as they do, carry the same exact gun in the same exact way as they do. I don't believe in that. I don't. Glock factory sights suck. Yes, they do. Zev products suck. Yes, they do. Punisher anything on a gun is lame. Yes, it is. Tactical medicine. Now, here's something that I actually don't have a whole lot of experience with because I am not a medical person. The extent of my medical training is self-aid buddy care that the military has given me once every 3 years, and that is the extent of my medical training. So I will not comment too much on this section. There are definitely people out there who know better than I do, so I will refuse to comment too much on that. So yeah, that was a lengthy video. That pretty much covers all of the points that they had gone over in this little kind of Facebook post here from one of the gun pages that I follow. But really, the main takeaway from this is I really don't like it when the gun culture has a sense of tactical elitism and that certain things, especially for new people who get caught up in this kind of recommendation, is the lack of a lot of personal experience and devaluing your personal experience, right? So a lot of the opinions that I have formed and made have been from my experience, my time, what I've seen, some research that I have done for myself, and I make up my own opinions. Very, very, very rarely do I ever go somewhere on the internet and say, okay, whatever person's idea or opinion take on something, that is what I'm going to follow to the exact letter. That is the gospel truth and nothing else, right? I do not believe in that at all. So when the easiest example is when people start talking about ARs and how Palmetto State is trash, Anderson is trash. No, I don't agree with that at all. I do strongly believe in making your own experiences and seeing for yourself. Go out there. Heck, if you feel comfortable doing it, go buy an Anderson AR and see how it works for you. You may be surprised. For good or bad. Watch this age very poorly, but my point is, if there's something that you're not sure about and you're trying to do research, because something you're not sure about and you're a well-minded, reasonable individual, so you want to do as much research as you can to find out about something and make an informed decision. I would very strongly, highly, cautiously recommend that when you read stuff like this, take it with a grain of salt. and understand that some people definitely take the opinions of professionals and appealing to professionals, to authority, as the absolute gospel truth. But they themselves have either little to no personal experience with that whatsoever. But they will claim all day, up and down, that a certain product is bad or that a certain product is good. For the most part, I don't really like to talk about products that I haven't really used myself. Things that I have not experienced myself, because to me that is the ultimate thing that shows to me is my personal experience and what has happened to me and what I have personally observed myself. Because no one can tell me that I'm wrong for observing something that I have personally observed. They just can't. So basically what I'm saying is, take all that with a grain of salt and try as much as you can to experience for yourself. Keep an open mind about things, because there are certain things that you're not going to be able to experience for yourself. So let's say something like a full auto MP5, right? I have shot those before. Phenomenal. They are like the best subgun I have ever used. But there are some people who say, oh, well, an MPX is way better than a full auto MP5. To which I ask the question, okay, well, have you fired a full auto MP5? Have you fired a full auto MPX enough to make that distinction, to say definitively on your own that that is something that you can actually believe in, and not just something that you heard from a third party, that you researched on the internet, that someone else has told you must be the way, right? And that applies for me as well. But there's so much of advocation for things that people have not had their own personal take, personal experience on, but have simply heard from others, and they will tell you all day, up and down, how things are without having their own experience, which is very, very dangerous. I don't think people should do that. So keep an open mind about things, make up your own decisions, make up your own mind for yourself, experience things for yourself as much as you can to make up your own opinions, and then go from there, because then you will very quickly see who are the people that don't have true experience like you do, and you will be very, very quickly be able to identify them, and if you want, call them out and say, hey, I think you're mistaken about this. So anyway, that's a very, very long video, but that's just something I wanted to cover in this particular post here, because it's been on my mind for a while, and I kind of wanted to go over it bit by bit and kind of give my take on it, and this recurring trend of well, I heard it from a guy who heard it from a guy, heard it from a guy, so it must be true, right? So please don't do that. Make up your own mind, get your own experiences, go out there and see for yourself. So that's all I got to say about that, and we'll see you next time.